Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Pedophile Huntress. I'm really excited today. I have Kathleen with me. Kathleen Johnson has written many books. One of them that we're going to talk about today is Healed to Heal. She's written another book that I think is beautiful, and it's called Something to Forgive. And I hope that we'll have time to talk about that. One of the things I thought was really pertinent to the discussion on my show is how many people who have lived through and come through severe trauma carry the wounding in their body. That beautiful book called The Body Keeps the Score that we know Kessel wrote, that was a fantastic book. And it is actually just really a godsend because it does explain to you what your body does when you live through trauma. Kathleen's book, it was beautiful going through it. Much of it reminded me of the process that God has taken me through to heal my heart. So I think the kingdom of God looks at healing, whether it's a broken leg, a broken heart, or a head that needs to be fixed. I'll tell you, I think that his kingdom heals the same way. So I'm excited for this conversation today. I think it's really from trauma to healed would be a story I would tell, but I'm really excited to bring the parallels of healing in the kingdom of God to you today. So, Kathleen, welcome. I'm really excited to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Jody. It's a huge honor. I've been looking forward to this for a long time. Your story has inspired me so much. So just so glad to be here.
Awesome. Thank you. So, looking at your book, I loved this one thing that you said. Let me tell you something I've come to believe with my whole heart. When God heals you, it's never just for you. So many of the most powerful healing ministries in history didn't start out preaching, they started out needing one. They were distressed and hurting. I just thought that was so beautiful. And I kind of want you now to bring us into your story because it's the truth. My life is a living prophecy of what a restored life looks like. I should not be who I am. So tell me, how did you get on this journey of writing this book called Heal to Heal? Can you take us into the story about that?
Absolutely, I can. Well, I'm very fortunate in that I have followed God most of my life. I really knew to seek God when I was going through difficulties. But when I was going through the hardest time in my life, which for me, unlike many other people that have gone through something much worse, I went through an unwanted divorce, betrayal, some things happening there. And I really kind of spiraled into a time of fear. In that process, I learned to seek God at a deeper level. And fast forward a few years, I had learned some of these spiritual disciplines like meditation, scriptural memory, but I ended up having some physical problems that I believe were related in part to
Mm,
unforgiveness. I believe they were related to a lot of things. And I
mhm.
went through this sort of journey where I believe some things like that were manifesting in my body. And I had this belief that God would heal me, but it wasn't happening. And so I was living in this sort of kind of just juxtaposition, apparent contradiction, and just struggling. And I got to a place, Jody, where I was waking up in literally crushing pain, and I wasn't able to do all this stuff.
Mm,
And if anybody's ever been there, where the people are sort of looking at you like they're waiting for you to do the thing that you're supposed to do, and
yes.
you just can't do it, and you feel like less than, and it's just the people are just asking you, oh, you still have that thing, and it's just a hard time. But in that process, also what was a wonderful gift from God is that I just spent so much time with him, just crying out to him. And he taught me some things during this time that were absolutely life changing. And I ended up reaching up for God and receiving a divine healing. And the long story short is that set me on sort of a holy fire to help other people
Okay.
see that, hey, this is possible. Don't give up on this thing. And in that, sort of the rest of it sort of multiplied out. I started noticing all these other stories, all these other lives, and they were teaching me so many things. So that's a huge thing
No,
I'll
I
cram into a little
yes,
nutshell.
and because you bring that up, I actually do want to read from your book Something to Forgive. She writes a book and she subtitles it A Blueprint for Breaking the Chains We Cannot See. And you start with a flashback, and I know I really want to read this because you bring that up, and I know that many of our listeners understand flashbacks, know what it is, and you say closed eyes slowly opening to blurry white light, water streaming. How long have I been crying? I'm drenched, wet, submerged, pounded. But this water is not from tears. It's warm, relentless, beating down all around me. Slowly, realization sets in. I'm crumpled in an awkward heap at the base of my shower, suspended in time, unable to move. From somewhere deep inside me, a whisper, "You must forgive him." So what you just shared is that moment where and how many listeners can understand what I want to stop on that before we move on because I think it's so significant no matter what the pain is, no matter what we've gone through to come to this moment in life where now all of a sudden we have this burden, our body is beginning to speak out the pain, the unforgiveness. So you've gone through this unwanted divorce, and in this is your deepest heartbreak that you've experienced in life from reading those words. That's the way I take it. Is that true about that time?
Yeah, it really was. I felt such a deep betrayal, and I just was not able to sort of deal with it. It was just sort of all encompassing at that time. And
Right. And rejection.
yeah,
One of the
rejection.
things I think about pain is as I read your words, it is the absence of all good things, but really all trauma, all pain is really at the end of it. I think the worst is rejection. And when
Yeah,
a child's hurt, it's rejection. When you lose a marriage, it's really kind of
yeah,
rejection,
yeah,
right? And I always think about I remember Jesus on the cross when he cried out and said, "My God, why did you forsake me?" It was a separation. It was a bit of a rejection, if you will. You know what I
yeah,
mean? So talk about how did that found now all of a sudden you find your body is playing this out, right?
yeah. For sure. And I just, I think I was in a bit of denial about that for a while as well, because
Mm.
I had this sort of conception of like, I would like to intellectualize it a little bit. And for me, especially, and I think maybe this is one of the downsides of having such a wonderful upbringing, is that, I've done these things, I've served God, I've done this. Hello. That doesn't mean, that does not
Mhm.
preclude you from not only free will, but your own self-righteous ideas can be you know, bring you into a downward spiral. I had to come face to face with truth, the truth that
Mhm.
had happened and the truth that I did need to forgive, and I had to get clear about what that meant and what it didn't mean. Because in that process too, and again, I'm not trying to go deeply into the book, I did start studying some of the things that you clearly are certified in about how these things are, they do affect us neurologically,
Mhm.
emotionally, physically, spiritually. There's no separation of the thing. That thing has to be dealt with because it will affect you on every level. And I'm sure that you've found that to be true as well.
Exactly. And that's kind of why I really did want to start. And I started with that quote from your book because I don't think that people really equate that a broken heart can work out, in many ways. The funny thing is, as a child, my legs, yeah, I'm talking little, 6, 7, 8, I would wake up with severe leg pains.
Mm,
Now, my mind didn't bring back any of the abuse, my mind didn't bring back the murder, but my
yeah,
body brought back the pain.
yeah,
And so I think to me, it is this gift that's wrapped in really ugly paper, but it keeps us on the hunt for what God has, which is always healing, right?
yeah, yeah. So true. And I mean, the healing there, and again, one of my favorite analogies about that is that when we think of shutting down that part of our heart because we don't want to get hurt, what we're actually doing, there's a block there, and there's an analogy that I use in the book that if you had your sink wasn't working and you called a plumber and he came and you said, "My sink's not working," and he'd be like, "Ma'am, there's a huge block," and you'd be like, "Oh, that, just can you not worry about that and just fix this thing?" That's kind of what we do. We don't realize that that thing that we think we're holding on to, that
Mhm.
we just can't let go. It's almost a betrayal of our pain. But no, that's the thing that's blocking God's healing from coming through. And so being able to realize that everything is interconnected. We are spiritual beings. We're mind, body, and
Mhm.
spirit, primarily spirit, but all of these affect one another. We can't isolate one part and say, okay, well, I'm going to just be over here and not deal with those. Those things are affecting us. And to your point, the things that you went through, which I can't even imagine, you could only handle certain aspects of that. And so your body would, like I'm sure you could talk through that better than me, but I think it's all connected though. That's kind of the
Well,
point.
and I think it's important. I love that we're having this discussion today because pain cannot, I tell my story because if God can do it for me, God can do it for anybody. But I
Yeah,
also like to add that pain is not a measurable source
yeah,
of something. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying? Like
yeah,
one, let's say you were raped at 25. That could
mhm,
be as life altering and life changing as growing up in a childhood where you were raped for,
yeah, yeah,
15 years. So you can never just stop
yeah,
and say one thing. So I think it's just such a good, it's so good. And
mm,
you also brought up something that I want to bring up is my life until this point was pretty good. You know what I mean? And I've
yeah,
been a
yeah,
pretty good girl. And the thing was, is my life, this was the book that I wrote is called A Prisoner by No Crime of
yeah,
My Own, because the same thing was true of me. I was so young that I didn't have time yet to make my own choices or put myself in
mm.
a prison. But I did find myself in a prison when I was of age because of all these other things that had happened to me. I also think that's a huge part of the injustices of it. And you talked about fear. So talk to me a little bit about how this injustice, was it the injustice of it that brought fear into your life, or what brought the fear to you, do you think, as you go back and articulate?
I think that fear is the fear that I had is the same fear that has been the problem with man from the very beginning. You think about the garden, Adam and Eve. Where did fear come into the world? It's when he sinned, he went from God reliance, which is I'm a branch on the vine, I receive spirit to spirit communication, life, vitality, strength, to now I choose for myself. And what he didn't realize in that, it's like yanking yourself off the vine because now it's up to you.
Mhm.
Now it's up to me.
Yes.
And so that's where fear comes in. And fear is a detachment. And so rejection of any kind, it's what idolatry does to us, Jody. I mean, if I and I realized that I had a measure of that in my marriage. I had a measure of this concept of what it was supposed to be like.
Mhm.
And when it
Mhm.
wasn't that, and when that was missing, instead of having been fully rooted and grounded in God, of course, I was trying to follow God to the best that I could. But instead of being fully rooted and grounded, I realized there was a despair there. But it's just like the prophet
Mhm.
Isaiah said, trust in the Lord himself, for he is the rock eternal. If you really are planted firmly on the rock, when these other things come and the wind and rains come, sure, there's going to be a measure of, discouragement or hardship, but it won't be the same. It won't be this absolute
Right.
everything goes south because we have to have our identity and our worth. We have to have that on the solid rock because everything else can move, right? So when the thing goes, whatever it is, you're in
Yes. Well,
trouble.
it's interesting, and I want to talk about that for a minute, and I love that, and then we'll move into this. But you talked about idolatry, and I think people don't recognize this is not the a Baal, like an
Yeah.
idol of Baal sitting there.
Right.
So many people get that wrong. It can be your children, it can be how
Yeah.
you look, it can be exercise. I mean,
Yeah.
people always put the wrong measurement on the kingdom of God. He is love. It's not what he does, it's who he
Yeah.
is. And so what he's always trying to say is, I know you think that you know my love, but I assure you, you don't. And as soon as something comes that shakes our foundation, all of a sudden we're like, oh my gosh, what just happened? And
Yeah.
so the beautiful thing is when you go through and allow God's healing to come, your second state is far better than any state you had before,
Mm.
right?
So true. I mean,
Yeah,
the
and
things,
life is just lived in
yeah,
a much fuller way when you allow healing
yeah.
to happen. But you're right, there's so many things that need to come down. So what did when you said that, did you have the idol of your marriage, like just a good life? Like what did that look like for you?
I think I had the concept of my marriage being that security, that validation, that that's who I am. I'm this person in this Christian marriage. So I always wanted that. But when I went back out into the dating world and all, there's such a crazy story. I should write a book about that too. I had to learn how to stop getting my validation from those things. I mean, we all have a measure of that.
Mhm.
I mean, come
Sure we
on.
do. Yeah.
But just the process of learning that it's possible for me to, in the presence of God, the fullness of joy. Like I used to hear that years and years ago, and I thought that was kind of hokey. And I would be like, really? The presence of God? No, there's a real ability to be in
Mhm.
his presence and feel just incredible strength and love and peace. And so when you get
Mhm.
just a taste of it, it's like the taste and see that the Lord is good, then you're onto something. So I would say to anybody that's listening, listen, there is something to this thing. And when you press in for it, and I'm sure you have been speaking to your listeners about this kind of thing, he can give us that full, you know, everything we need for life and godliness and the knowledge of him who loves us and who made us. When you start to get that, you want more of it, you know?
Well, it is, and you're talking about the intimacy, which to me, a healed life is about that intimacy that he brings to us.
Yeah.
But like the pipe that you were talking about, the
Yeah.
faucet that has a clog, a life that has unprocessed pain that leads to unforgiveness and bitterness and all these things, you have a hard time with intimacy around you at all because of the fear and because of you don't want connection. And so God, I believe, is always reaching out to us to heal us, even physical healings, which we are going to talk about.
Yeah.
Even physical healings bring an intimacy like, God, you saw me, right? It's this
Yeah.
intimate connection that he's longing for. Because if we're healed and we don't find love, to me, then there's no purpose for the
Yeah.
healing, right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that just brings up so many chills in my heart right now. Just so many things because it's just like one of the guys in my book that realized a measure of this, A.B. Simpson, and he literally just put his hand up to heaven and realized that God could be his life and vitality and strength in every category. And he just made that vow, I'm going to take my life from you. Jody, he was just going to take his physical life and intimacy and love. And he had a thing that later was talking about, once it was the blessing, now it is the Lord. Once it was the healing, now it is himself alone. He wanted him. He realized that in him he had everything else. Like that was a real thing.
Yes. No, it's yeah, that's so, so true. So you talk about, I want to kind of start here now going into your book, because I think that was a very beautiful introduction to how healing the body and the soul and the spirit, all of that, because there are religious wounds that happen. Many people who
Yeah.
come through things that I come from have a lot of religious traumas. I mean,
Oh
I knew
yeah.
this one
I
girl
read
that
about
had to
some of
stare
that.
at a cross, and I mean, there's all these things, but even a religious trauma can be, I've lived such a good life and now this bad stuff happened to me, right? And
Yeah.
so you talk
Yeah.
about changing the lens that you carry. And so I love that when you talk about the stories and stepping into all of these people. And one of the things that you say is Bill Johnson writes, testimonies are prophecy. They reveal the nature of God, which never changes. And so I want you to bring us into your favorite story when you write this book of all these people, these
Mhm.
the majors in life in this category. So, you know, firstly, you dedicate this book to a sister. Can you talk to me about
Mhm.
the dedication? Because I wonder if this helps
Yeah.
us know why you went into the deep purpose of this book.
My sister-in-law Tracy, who is cancer-free now, but was bad uh, breast cancer. Just very dear. She still has had some treatments that are finalizing, but just a very courageous heart. And I have been very passionate about this, sometimes telling her to look at this and read this. And I'm sure she's been like, enough, enough, enough. But over time, I do feel like she has been able to open her heart more to these things, And I think for her and many other people, we end up having a sense of unworthiness. And that's like a whole nother 4 hour thing. And that one of the things I've found from the people I've studied that have lived this, that can be just as much of a block as unbelief. And so we have got to take our, self-worth and realize we are worthy in Christ and those kind of things. But she's an incredible, wonderful person. And just when I started, again, after my divine healing, started to recognize people around me that were going through a struggle, whatever it was, they were never going to hear the end from me. I was going to be there saying, hey, listen to me, check this out. Don't give up on this. Go check this out. And that's just the way I feel because I feel like we in our modern culture had just watered this stuff down. We don't take it seriously anymore. We've stopped believing it's even possible. And then that just blocks us over and over again. And I don't even think I answered your question properly, but
Well,
that's
you
the
did,
thing.
and it makes me want to go back to so we're going back into your story where now you've been betrayed, you're walking through this fear, you know you've got to find healing. Your body starts responding in a way that it's betraying you. I bet it feels like
Yeah,
betrayal. One of the things that I have done in my life is I could overcome anything it felt like because I mean, what else were you going to do? Take away my birthday? Everything that
yeah.
could be taken had been taken, right? Thankfully, never my children or anything like that.
Mm,
There are always deeper pits. And so I'm not saying that. But so now all of a sudden, when your body starts betraying you, and I had back surgery in my 20s, all of these
mm,
things because my body Really, right? It betrays you. So talk
Yeah.
about that. How did that betrayal show up in your body? Let's start there and then we'll keep going.
Well, cervical spine issues that were ongoing and ended up with a lot of other complicating factors, spinal stenosis and
Okay.
bone stirs and just all these like deteriorating degenerative disc disease. And I had one surgery, and then after a while, that was no good, and it kept getting worse and worse. And surgery wasn't an option. And I was looking all around the country for options. I had one guy tell me maybe stem cell. I could like maybe fork out all this money out of pocket. Is that sure to work? No. And so I just remember sitting in a doctor's office staring at this poster on the wall and being like, I don't want to, I don't want to, I don't want to live like this. And so, but then I had like, there were so many things. I mean, when I say I was crying out to God, I would hear things whispered back to me, the forgiveness thing, all these things, and the verses
Mhm.
from, you know, all the verses that I had memorized, they were kind of whispered back to me. And I had to get clear about God is trying to show me something here. There's a way forward, but I have got to be obedient to some of these things and listen to what he's trying to show me. And,
Oh, that's so, well, it's right. That's so beautiful. And there's so much wisdom in that. I don't think often. So here's one of the things I'm going to say that can conflict with that too. And
yeah,
is we've got pain and now our
yeah,
body has pain and we get to go to a doctor and a doctor can diagnose
yeah,
physical pain. A doctor
yeah,
cannot diagnose a broken heart.
yeah, yeah,
And so sometimes people become reliant on the physical pain
yeah,
because it's something that can be seen. Did you
yeah.
kind of grapple with that at all before you really wanted healing from it?
I remember coming across that in one of the books I was reading about divine healing about
Mm,
when, uh, Jesus was asking the man, "Do you want to get well?" And that hit me like a ton
right.
of bricks. Like, what? Sometimes those are those things that our body is doing to serve us. It's just so hard to even address that. Like, I don't want this, but maybe I do. Like, maybe there's something in it for me that I can't let go, or that it accomplishes something for me, or like there's all those, and that's such a
Yes.
nuanced thing of are there pieces here that help me have my victim story or like whatever, it's not that there's not a victimized aspect of the thing that you've been put through against your will, but there is that place underneath where you have got to come just front and center before the throne and say, Lord, I know that you can change me into your likeness. I know that you can flood your life and vitality through every part of me. And I don't have to hold on to any of that. I can put on this new self to just be ready to say, and that's why there's another book coming, and I won't go into the long thing, but it's touching Jesus about the woman with the issue of blood, because the key thing that she did that anybody that's suffering can get is she got desperate. I mean, she spent all her money, she got worse. That desperation can be that moment,
Yes.
Jody, where we can either go
Yes.
straight to despair or we can become
Mhm.
determined and say, I'm not taking no for an answer. I'm touching Jesus for healing. And so I'll go through whatever it takes. You have to teach me something, Lord, bring it. Those kind of things.
Well, I see, and that's beautiful. I think people talk about stages of grief. People do not
Yeah.
talk about stages of healing, do they?
Yeah.
But I think that when we begin to heal, firstly, we have to look at it, right? We have to recognize
Yeah.
what the pain even is. And a lot of people want to jump over that step. So there are
Yeah.
these stages of healing. And we just talked about it like, oh, well, actually, this is a pain that somebody can see. Maybe I like
Yeah.
this. But then we can get to a place
Yeah.
where I am this is starting to destroy me, right?
Yeah.
And so I love that. I think that's a beautiful thing. So what was the final stage then? What did your healing look like for you?
Well, I got into the thing where I was doing meditation. I had a
Okay.
measure of that before, but I was seeing myself well. That was something I really believed strongly in. Our vision, without vision, the people perish. And we sometimes just don't think
Hmm.
about how strong that can be. That gets into a different discussion. So instead of seeing myself, because I used to play all the stuff out and look at my x-rays and the MRI, like I used to do all that. And I realized, hey, don't focus on that, because what you focus on expands. That's a real thing. That's not just some new age
Hmm.
teaching. That's something that, sets your mind on things above. And that includes the good things that you hope are going to happen in your life. That's setting your mind on things above. And when I set my mind on everything's horrible and it keeps getting worse, hey, I'm going to blow that thing up. So that was one
Right.
thing, is seeing myself on the other side of this, hearing my children say, Mom, you can play with this again, meditating on the word, asking for healing, but also just resting in Him and trying not to get so hung up in the it hasn't happened yet, hasn't happened yet. All those kind of things. It's just like learning to rest and
Yes.
believe, building my belief, building my belief. That's possible
That's
for us to do.
beautiful. And that sounds a little bit like surrender, which is a really
Yeah.
beautiful thing in life. And we don't like to surrender when we have been hurt deeply.
Yeah.
It's a very hard thing to do because we want to protect. So that's beautiful. So building those things that happen. So this book then was born out of your search for healing. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, partially. I mean, w when I say that it was born out of that, while I was seeking my healing, was studying divine healing. I was reading books. I was studying the
Okay.
scriptures. When I had my healing, I became extraordinarily fascinated. I was like, there are other people like me that, then you started to go back and study, and you're like, he was on his deathbed. This guy was given up for dead. Hello, these people that we've heard about, all these people came within inches of death and then received a healing, and then they
Hmm.
couldn't stop talking about it. And to me, that's so newsworthy because sometimes we hear these
Hmm.
stories, and when you look, God did something through this person and it didn't stay with that person. That person, and it's just like when I look at people like you with your ministry, ultimately, that's why I think Heal to Heal is just like it's a mission statement for any Christian, whatever you have been through.
Yes.
You
Yes.
take that thing because the person that's been through sexual abuse, they're not going to listen to me. I didn't go through that. What do I have to tell help
Hmm.
that person? But they're going to listen to you. Somebody that went through a
Hmm.
divorce or something like that, they might listen to me. We have something to share when we've been through something hard. And it doesn't matter what it is, it can impact lives. If it impacts one person, we are all meant to be healed to heal.
Well, and I think that's a beautiful diagnosis for why we should want to heal. And that's just kind of a pun on words, just having fun. But I think that that is so true because sometimes it's looking at the others that give us the courage to continue on, like your children,
Yeah.
or I know my children gave me great courage to go forward
Yeah.
because I betrayed them as a mom because I wasn't healed. And as a result of that, I lived in denial and I didn't see things around me and all of that stuff. But you know what? It's the love for other people that move us on. Did you feel
Yeah.
that at all as you know what I mean? Like because I can hear you say now I just want to share. So there
Yeah.
is this beautiful thing that takes us outside of ourselves and says this is a much bigger picture, right?
Yeah, it does. And I think when we do that, it's just like I've been doing all this study. I'm not even close to being a neuroscientist, not even close, but I love to study some of these things. And like there is what they call the default mode network. It's the part of us where when we're just chilling out, we go to our problems, we go to the stuff in our life, we go to all that
Mm,
stuff and me, me, me. And so part of surrender is being willing to say, I'm focused more on the outward thing. And so it's doing two things at once, right? It's getting us out of that funk where we're spinning stuff around and we're overanalyzing everything to death. And we are
yes.
now thinking, wow, how could I get this person to see this? And oh, I got an idea. And all of a sudden you're on to the next thing. And the Holy Spirit is just, flooding you with ideas. And so
Hmm.
it's living by the Spirit of the living God, which is meant to be the living water. And that's what it ends up
Hmm.
being, really, Jody, I think. And you're living it. It's when those things are flowing out of you naturally because that's the Spirit of the living God speaking through you.
Oh, I think that's absolutely beautiful. And we are his children and he's a creator. People don't even think about that. So when I was
Yeah.
listening to you, you're creating. Instead of
Yeah.
sitting trying to solve problems, create. It's a beautiful
Yeah.
thing to sit and create. And so I think when we use our minds in the purpose of creating things,
Yeah.
it's better than mulling over this devastating rubble that we're looking at, right? What are we going
Yeah.
to create? It's just a beautiful thing. So I love this. Now, a lot of people listening won't know the generals of healing, that sort of thing. A lot of the
Yeah.
names in your book, I didn't know. A lot of the names I
Yeah.
did know. I think what's important, though, is I want you to bring us into your favorite story because I know you probably have a favorite story. Now, I just think it's interesting. Catherine Kuhlman was so out there that I can remember in my 20s, she scared me a little bit because she was so out there. But as I've gotten older and listened to her, she had such a divine nature about her and she wasn't frightened. to just be who she was. And she had so much peace about her and she was
Yeah.
calm. And so, like going through those, I love Smith Wigglesworth. Well, now I don't know that he was really this healer, but I just love so many things about him. So talk, I want to hear your favorite story and I want you to go through their story and why it was your favorite story. Tell us a story about their story. That's what I'd love to hear,
Okay.
actually.
Well, there's hard for me to pick one, but there is one that I would be disingenuous if I didn't tell you it was my favorite because it's T.L. Osborne. I didn't know about this
Mm.
guy. If any of you needs healing, you might as well, you could put my book somewhere, but go read his book called Healing the Sick. This man wanted to preach the gospel. He believed that signs and wonders could follow. He and his wife went over to India, and it was an absolute disaster. They wanted these things to happen, and the people there were like, "What does your God do that ours doesn't do?" And they
Mm.
ultimately came back into America in defeat and just disillusionment. He could have given up. Instead, he pressed in. He ended up having, fasting and prayer. He had a vision of the risen Christ. He went to some healing services where he saw some healings take place. He ended up getting his faith, and he and his wife went and read the New Testament again for the first time, like they'd never read it before. And they just come out of
Mm.
this thing like ready and believing for miracles. They go back, and this time miracles are breaking out. And go look and study his thing. You can't make this stuff up. And so, but one of my favorite stories is he brought all these people. God put this thought bomb in his mind, how big is possible? Because they were laying their hands on sick people, they were seeing people get well, but there were thousands of people. They only had so many hours in the day, they could not get it done. And the thing that
Wow.
God put in his mind is like, if all things are possible for one who believes, how big is possible? If I could save all these people right now, why couldn't I heal them all? And he's like, good point. So he started bringing all these people up. And one time there was 53 people that were deaf in one ear. 51 of them immediately heard after he prayed, the other two a week later. And
Mm.
you're like, what? What? This is the kind of thing we have just become numb. But the point and the reason that I love his story so much is that he did not start in victory. He started in defeat. He did not
Mhm.
see things. He was placing his hands on people. Nothing was happening. But because he didn't give up, Jody, he was able to press through and see amazing things. And one of my favorite quotes of
Love
his
that.
is God's power is always available for those who will believe it, speak it, and act on it. He says that's when miracles happen.
And listening to you tell that story, it occurs to me that he needed his own experience, right? And so
Yeah,
he goes there, but he doesn't really have the experience that I've
yeah,
heard you talk a couple of times today about experience. And Smith Wigglesworth talked about that. He said a man with an experience doesn't have to, basically uh, qualify what he believes to a man
yeah,
without an experience. And I think
yeah,
that that's hugely important, right? Is again, it's the power of your testimony, right? And that is
yeah,
how you overcome, right? Like but I think it's right. I don't know. Isn't that true? Because what you just said was then he went back away and got an experience. And when he came back and had an experience, which is really cool when I get to talk to people,
yeah.
it doesn't matter what their pain is. I was talking to a lady the other night. Actually, I was out for dinner and she lost her son in COVID. And you could
Mm,
tell, I could feel that her heart wanted to burst with pain. The
mm,
beautiful thing about my experience is I know the recesses of darkness where nobody can see your pain. And because I understood that, I took her hand and I could speak to her in that measure, the same measure of I understand hidden pain. And it was so beautiful. I just prayed with her with eyes open in the middle of a restaurant because of my experience, right? And that's what you were just
yeah.
talking about.
That's so touching to me. And that makes me realize that we're so uniquely created. We're living stones. We are all meant together to represent the body of Christ. We are his bride together. Like, I can't possibly minister to somebody like that, but you can. It's not that God can't work through me in an extraordinary way, but just the experiences that we've had have the capacity to become something so much greater as we yield them to him. And that's what you're doing when you pray with somebody like that. And I think for me, it's like my faith in the potential of these things is kind of being stretched, and so I'm all that much more
Mhm.
willing to place my hands on somebody with the belief that there's going to be results, and it's just life changing, truly.
Well, it is. And so tell us where your back is today.
No, I'm completely healed. I've been
I
completely
know,
healed for
right? So you
years.
missed you didn't
Oh, I'm
finish your
sorry.
story with that
No,
part.
I
That's
I
okay.
started doing.
We're
I
getting
had
there.
I had the belief, and people think maybe energy healing is from the devil or whatever. I don't believe that. I believe that God made the universe and that there is a focus when we do healing. Like if we're thinking about God or if we're giving God the credit for things, there's an aspect of that. But I believe that one of the reasons that we don't always um, feel it first is because it's happening in the unseen first. Whatever that means to you, however you analyze that.
Mm-hmm.
I knew I was healed before I was healed. And there are other people in my book that I speak about in the book that have had that experience as well. I had a feeling or a sense I'm healed. And I still had the pain. So let yourself hear that it's possible for you to get to a place where you just have a knowing. And then the healing manifested. And without going into a long story, I had some places where the pain was attacking again. And so I had that thing, oh, that wasn't real. And I really fought
Mm-hmm.
through that because by that time I'd read all this stuff and I'm like, back up. I'm standing on this. I'm not giving up on it. And when I did that consistently, it was gone and it's never come back. So it's been truly extraordinary.
Wow. And so with that, you talked about body, soul, spirit all being one. I believe completely in all of that stuff. Talk to me about how did your heart and all of that kind of in tandem heal at the same time? Did you do, work on your heart, on forgiveness
Oh
during
yeah.
these
hmm
processes?
I did. In fact, I have some in the forgiveness book that I did. I tried to do. I got them from various sources, and then I did my own sort of, hybrid version of them where I was trying to release these things to God and trying to see my heart, see myself giving these things to Him. So I did some kind of what I felt was like a deep meditative thing, um, releasing these things, releasing judgments, releasing anything that was not of God, trying to sort of see myself as being, filled with light. We're called children of light, and that's something I do to this
Hmm.
day. I do meditations where I see myself surrounded in light. Don't think you won't start to feel it, friend. You're gonna feel it. It's
I
gonna
love
change you.
that. Well, and I did want
Yeah,
to talk about the meditation because it's such a beautiful thing that, or even if you're praying with people, I often, when I think about where is Jesus with me in this moment, because I love to
yeah,
say it like that. You know
yeah,
what I mean? Like, where is Jesus with me? Or where's Holy Spirit with me? Or where's the Father?
yeah,
I love to sit there, and many times, particularly when it's the Father, all I see is just this light. It's so
yeah,
beautiful. It's His glory. It's almost like His glory, but you could just sit there for hours. And so
yeah,
I do know, there's this whole thing around yoga's bad and all this kind of stuff with some
yeah,
Christian stuff. And I just think these stupid religious spirits, they want to get us
yeah,
off kilter from these, it's just, I don't
yeah.
know. I think like, I think you know what I'm
I
trying
do.
to say.
Oh, I do. We want to rigidly define things. We get stuck in our
Yes.
analytical mind. Friend, if
Yes.
you are thinking of the Most High God and you are
Yes.
worshiping Him and loving Him, and you are not carried off by some foreign, false religion. I mean, I am allowed to stretch my body. I'm allowed to do these things. Everything is God's. I'm either using it for God or I'm using it for, it's like, it's law of the spirit of life or law of spirit of death. That's what I tell people when you get tangled
Yes.
up in some of these really sort
Yes.
of like rigid, this means this and this means this, and you can't do this because of this. Hold up, step back for just a minute. Is this thing the law of the spirit of life or the law of the spirit of death?
Right.
What is God? Beauty, harmony, light, goodness, truth. Hello. What's the enemy? Death, chaos, hatred, jealousy.
Right.
Hello.
No, it's really true. I think that people have a hard time distinguishing. It's really simple to love God, and people, the simplicity of it is, I think, what gets complicated to
Yeah.
people. Jesus says, I did this thing for you, and I just want you to accept it, and all you have to do is receive my love.
Yeah.
People take that,
Like, what? That's
add
too
rules
easy.
to it,
Yeah.
complications,
Yeah.
like shame. You have to do everything right, perfectionism. I cannot tell you all the things, and it is the simplest thing in the world. Receive my love and accept the gift that I'm giving you.
Yeah.
And we complicate it. And so healing is the very same thing. I went to traditional counseling for off and
Mm.
on about 20 years. And while I do believe there's a really good use for traditional counselors, they help you understand what your body's
Mm.
doing. You need to know what a flashback is. You need to know what PTS does to your body. but they cannot heal things the way that Jesus can when he walks in. And so, can you talk about that in that meditative thing? It sounded like you were, and this is where often I would leave counselors and go home and meet Jesus in my room, even
Yeah.
after over drinking or whatever it was that I had to get through
Yeah.
moments that were very, very difficult. I'd come home and there would be Jesus waiting for me. And it
Wow.
was remarkable the things that he did to facilitate the closure of some of those memories. So, how did that work with you?
That's just so beautiful. I love that. Well, for me, it was a little bit different. I started doing something that I believe in very much, and that is when you're talking about the meditation. I do a meditation where you think of Aslan from like The Lion and the Witch and the Wardrobe, the Lion of Judah,
Uh-huh.
right? I
Yeah.
think of him as being sort of behind me and around me with like his, yellow eyes and he's, it's like I'm protected, in him I live and move and have my being. I'm more than a conqueror and he has made me all these things. And I start to feel that and I start to just feel like everything that's not of him is just like the impurities are just flushed out of my body and I see myself getting glowing and I'm more and more filled with light and I can just feel his strength. And I'm like, wow, Lord, and I praise you, and you're worthy of all glory and honor, praise, for you created all things, and by your will, and I started getting into that, and I just
Mhm.
feel his presence and his love. And by the time I'm coming out of that, I'm ready to go, I'm ready. Give me the mountain, Lord. Let's go get on the mountain. So, and I think,
Exactly. And no, and I love those times. And those are times where honestly, they're so grand and so full of life and energy and all those things that I find myself feeling dull when I'm outside of what he does. I just want to come back to my
yeah,
office and just be with him or listen to, a Christian podcaster that I know is going to lift my spirit up. Because then I go downstairs and I'll watch TV and just be a normal person. And I don't like the dull feeling anymore because it's like I just
yeah.
want to go sit with Holy Spirit. And of course, I can't sit with him 24/7, but I try to. When I go to sleep, I love to also have myself available for anything the Spirit of God might want to do because when you learn to live and walk closer to him, the intimacy is better than any intimacy you find
Oh.
in life anywhere else.
I went most of my life without it, and there's no words for it. But one thing I would add to the Jesus meditation or anything like that is that
Yeah.
I believe in the power of decision. In other words, if you can decide today, just decide. I believe that everything I need for life and godliness, God can bring it. He can bandage up my wounds. He can heal everything. So I'm just going to say that out loud. I believe that. I'm going to start to look for it. There's so much power in just that because I'm starting to watch for Jesus in my room. I'm starting to watch for Jesus all around me.
Mhm.
I'm starting to say Jesus is with me right now. I'm not apart from him. He's in me, he's through me. Like I have to start deciding that and then I'll start to experience more and more to the degree that I start to believe that it starts to become real for me. I mean, those things are tied together.
Yes, they certainly are. So you've written this book about forgiveness, and I'm sure that in this book you talk about what it looks like to release forgiveness because so many people that listen to me have been through tragedy in life. Can you
Mm.
talk about the real act of forgiving and what that looked like?
Well, I would have to say something as a preface that I think is
Yes,
almost so
please.
important is to understand what forgiveness is not. It is not the same as trust, and I won't go into that. It is not the same as
No,
giving up
please, we
on
have time.
justice.
You talk
You
about
know,
that. I think it's important to
yeah,
dissect it because
yeah,
it's kind of like saying I'm a Christian. People will categorize you into a certain
yeah,
thing. So I like to say I'm a Jesus girl because I am.
yeah. There you go.
But so I want you to take the time.
Yeah,
Don't rush
sure.
this because many times there's a preconceived notion that people don't understand. It's not reconciliation. But talk to
Yeah,
me about, I just want to hear that because
sure.
you took the time to articulate in a book what it looks like. So now slowly digest what that process looked like for you.
Absolutely. Well, I always say I came crashing into the crossroads of bitter and better. And if you can think of yourself there at that crossroads,
Yeah.
the thing to get before you get like before you can do it, like you're like, I still can't do it. I remember in the book I say, not doing it, can't do it. You may be there and it's okay to be there, but just decide that, okay, Lord, at this bitter or better, I want better. Just say, I want better. I may not know exactly, but that's what I want. I
Mhm.
align with that. And what you start to realize over time is that the way to better is the way of forgiveness. But because it's not the same as trust, you're not giving up on pain. If somebody's beating you down and doing all these things, you're not going to continue to say, "Oh, that's great." And that's the second thing is you're not saying it's okay. What happened to you, what that person
Mhm.
did, not okay. It's not okay. If we don't call an evil thing good. The word tells us to do not to do that.
Amen.
God does not want us to
Amen.
call an evil thing good. So we're never going to do that. Okay. But what we're going to do is get out of the judge's chair because the thing is God is the only one that can judge justly. And believe me, we think we can be more just than God, but we can't. He is, ultimately, I don't think anybody ever really gets away with anything. We have grace when we're forgiven if that
Mhm.
person repents.
Mhm.
But, we want to see that judgment exacted so that we can feel some kind of relief from that. But in the reality is, and this is another thing I talked about in the book, is that we actually have created a bond with that person that we haven't forgiven. And, people
Mhm.
that can see in the spirit, who I talk about in the book, can actually see that. Like it's like a chain. Like we stay stuck. Do you want to stay at the level of that person that hurt you? So that's what you got to realize is
Exactly.
happening so that you
Yes.
can say, hello, I'm going to wish that person good. I'm going to release them to God, not saying it's okay, not giving up on justice, not trusting them, but now I'm free. That ball and chain just went thud off of you. And you can feel a lightness, and it may not happen over, I always say the litmus test is when I think of that person, do I feel like that just rising in you, like you'll know, okay, I'm not
Mhm.
yet. So I try again. And I talk about in the book where it can be just one little step at a time. Every time you try to release them, hey, deep down there's something happening. So you just don't give up.
Mhm.
And then a day will come, and I'm sure
Mhm.
you've talked about this. I have stories that I tell where like memories that I used to go back to that memory and I just couldn't. But then I'd go back to that memory and
Mhm.
I could tell the girls about it and I could laugh about it. Like there was something there that I could extract from even something that started bad that day or whatever. That's when you know, oh my gosh, he just took that thing away from me. And it doesn't even hurt me anymore. That's
It's sad.
possible.
It's amazing. I think you articulated it so well. And I always say it's separating us from the person who hurt us. And when you think of
Yes.
it as a separation, right, like you said, you don't want to be tethered to them
Yeah.
because it just you're going to continue to be hurt with them when you're tethered to the person who
Yeah.
hurt you. When you release them, again, that word surrender, I'm just going to give it to you, God, because I'm sick of holding on to this. And it's just a
Yeah.
separation and a surrender,
Yeah.
but it's you're right. Then you can look back on things. It's remarkable what my mind has to go back to sometimes just when it's triggered, and it can be so vile and so ugly. And just a quick surrender, Lord, I just forgive them again. I bet I've said, I forgive you thousands of times in my life. And you know why? Because I want to stay free, because I want to release that memory and keep it in the past. That's why I do it. So I don't think that it's a one and done.
No, no,
But
no.
when that comes up, I just say, wow, I'm just going to release that again. I'm going to release that pain one more time.
That was beautifully said. And I would say even too, like you might have something that you thought was fully gone. And if you start to ponder it, if some other thoughts come in around it,
Mhm.
you can get snarled up in it again. I mean, it's always sort of inviting us, the word says sin is crouching at the door. These things are just wanting to enslave us. And if that's the best thing is to remember, do
Yes.
I want to be a slave? No. And how can I get past this is what if when I release this is when I really start for that thing to flood in, if I can let the divine healer have access because when I
Yeah.
block that thing off, I don't get that. So that's wonderful.
No, it's absolutely beautiful. Well, there was just so many beautiful things that I loved in your book. I cannot believe we're at time almost. But in one of your last chapters in Receiving and Releasing, you write that healing never ends with the healed. It leaves a trail. It
Mm,
extends, it ripples out, it calls out, come and see what God can do again. And you know what? A lot of times people just tell me, Jody, why can't you just get on down the road and just live your life? You're healed, go on. And you know what? It actually tears me up because because of what God has done for me. How can I not share what he's done? And how can I not tell that person that's brokenhearted and wants to kill themselves next week? How can I not tell you that just hold on? God has a grand healing for you. People just want me to be quiet and get on because God's healed me now. How can I? Right, Kathleen? I can't. I can't. I
You
won't. Do
can't.
you know what the right
You
answer is?
you
I won't.
And thank God for that. It's let the redeemed of the Lord tell their story. They
Yeah,
overcame him how? By the blood of the Lamb and by the power of their testimony, the word of their testimony. Your testimony is changing lives every time you open your mouth. And how could you ever stop
right.
wanting to do that? And so I applaud that. And I just say it's a wonderful blessing. And, we release death or life out of our mouth every time we speak
Yes.
anything. And, when we talk about hurt people, well, healed people. And
I
so
love that.
how
Well, it's
wonderful is
so
that?
true. And and you saying that, what's so beautiful is what people don't understand is when I step into the arena of being the pedophile huntress, I'm bringing life there. People are
Yeah,
like,
you
why do
are.
you go under that? Well, I was in the shower one day and I heard the Lord say, the pedophile huntress. And I'm like, oh, that's got it. This is crazy. And so I looked at it and nobody had been using it. And I thought, Father, why wouldn't we be a huntress? Because he's already won. So the battle's already
Yeah.
won. I'm going into a field and just collecting his people. The battle's already over, you guys. Jesus won. So I am a
Yeah.
huntress just bringing God's people over to the
You're
side of the cross.
calling them out of darkness into his
Yes.
marvelous light, and that is
That's
powerful.
exactly right. I love it. So believe it or not, we are at time, and I just loved this so much. I assume that I would love to have you back and talk about this just healing in a more profound way. It's such a deep thing, and I loved that we started the introduction around all of God's healing looks the same, whether it's your heart, whether it's your toe, whether it's an arm, whether you have migraines that need to be healed. Everything starts in the work of the heart. It's my belief. I'll believe it till the day I die. A lot of times when he plucks out something of your heart, all of a sudden your migraine goes away. So always look towards the plucking of the heart. God, Jesus stood up and said, I came to heal the brokenhearted and set the captive free. But before we close, I always like to give my guests the last final minutes to just share anything that the Lord put on your heart to share today, or anything that profoundly you want to leave. Because, by the way, sister, you too are out here doing the good work of God. And thank you for using your testimony because all of our testimonies matter. We need every single one of us. We have
Yeah.
the same significance one to another because that's why we're called the body of Christ. So I'm going to give this time back to you to share.
Sure. Well, thank you so much, Jody. It's been a true pleasure. I hope that one of these days I'll get you on my podcast. I've got a podcast called Heal
Yeah,
to
I'd
Heal.
love
But
to.
to anybody that is hearing today that is going through a health crisis or knows somebody that is, and again, mind, body, spirit, God can heal it all. So hear that and know that, it's not just about the book. But if you can look at that thing again through the lens of the words of Jesus, which is all things are possible for one who believes. One thing that I've realized in my studies is that we tend to get stuck in this analytical thing and we start to agree with the thing that we see, but there's a higher reality than what you see. The unseen is higher than the seen. And so get excited again about the gospel of
Yes.
Jesus Christ. He came not just to save us, but to heal us as well. And there is tremendous evidence. There is not just this, foo-foo thing or this idea. There are plenty of examples. They are extensive people that have proven this to be true. Well, you're like, why don't more people get healed? There's a lot of reasons. But one of the main reasons, those things are happening in the unseen. And we have to be humble enough to admit, I don't see everything that's happening in the unseen. Sometimes it's unforgiveness. Sometimes it's this. Sometimes it's that. But if you or somebody that you know is suffering, if you're willing to read the book, there are stories in each chapter, and each one of them has somebody different that went through a different thing. Okay. And you
Yes.
too can receive healing from the Lord Jesus Christ. And you can start right now by saying, I believe.
I love that. That's so beautiful. You can find Kathleen. She is actually at scripturegirl.com and her book is Healed to Healed. She has about 4 books. So go to scripturegirl.com and look her up. Kathleen, blessings to you. Thank you so much for
Thank you
being
so
with
much.
us. And until next time, you guys remember you see you. God is always hunting for you and looking for you to find your own story. Blessings to you, protection over you always. Thank you so much for being here. And until next time, I'll see you next time. Good night.
Thank you.